Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to our class today. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, and we study the words of the Buddha in order to help students on their journey to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where you've trained your mind to get to a mental state where it's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all these feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. You've trained your mind to the point where you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing that. And this happens through the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha taught how to eliminate these pollutions of the mind that are hindering it from experiencing this peace and this joy that is the enlightened mental state. So through studying his teachings, you're able to learn them, examine them, reflect on them. You're able to independently verify them through your reflection, and you're able to practice them by integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind. There's nothing based in the teachings of the Buddha that is based in belief. So you're not believing a bunch of things and hoping that something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning and practicing now in this life to be able to train your mind and experience the improvements to the condition of your mind in your life. A big part of this training is meditation. So we start each one of our classes with meditation, and then after our meditation, I'll explain to you guys what the Pali Canon and English study group is, because that's what today is all about, is our Pali Canon and English study group. We have different programs here, and they serve different purposes. So I'll explain to you guys what those are after our meditation. The way that we start with meditation is we start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. If you would like to see these chants, they're on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You're welcome to help yourself and get one, because we're going to be chanting in the Pali language, and you'll hear us reciting this as we're moving into meditation. Yeah, you're welcome to help yourself. Even if somebody would like to pass them around, you can even pass them around if you like. You'll see the Pali language there, and you'll even see the English translations as well. So it's important to understand that when we're chanting, that today we use this in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to remember the teachings, committing them to their memory, because everything he taught was oral, and they didn't have a way to capture the teachings other than to recite them orally, and that was able to help them then commit them to their memory. So they didn't have ability to write things down because the technology didn't exist in that region of the world during the lifetime of the Buddha. So they would recite his teachings word for word for word. So this is how chanting came about. And you can understand that chanting, it isn't a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer. There's nothing mystical or magical here happening. That's not what this is about. During the lifetime of the Buddha, again, they just used it in order to remember the teachings. But we're using it in order to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read these chants, you're going to see a lot of respect and gratitude for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually even created these chants. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't walk around and hand out chants and say, here, chant these things to me in order to respect me, because this would be ego, this would be arrogance, this would be putting yourself above other people. So instead, I suspect his students created these either during his life or after his death, because if you learned from a teacher how to move from the anger and the frustration and the guilt and the shame and all those other discontent feelings to this peace and joy, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students and not from him directly. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to do that as we ease into meditation. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to provide you some guidance so that you'll hear me actually guiding you during the meditation. But then there's going to be a long period of time where we're just meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone who's joining us online, welcome to all of you guys as well. We're just going to be meditating together. I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds like maybe a car going by or a bird chirping or a dog barking or something like this, but this is all normal. This is all impermanence. You can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So if you get to a point where you have craving, desire, attachment, where you're longing, yearning for things to be quiet, when you hear a sound, you'll be frustrated, you'll be annoyed. But just understand that this is impermanence, and you're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So when you're meditating, you're going to hear me provide you the guidance of just keep bringing the mind back to the breath. After that period of time where we've been meditating, we're going to come out of the meditation with some chanting, some more chanting, the same exact chants that we did going in. We'll do those coming out to help ease you out of meditation. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's actually 4 different positions that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. These are the 4 different positions, and you would learn these at different times because you're going to need them as part of your practice. So I teach these in various courses and retreats that we have. You'll be able to learn the different positions. But in terms of today, just to help you get started, I'll provide you a little bit of guidance on the seated position because that's often how people are learning, either sitting on the floor, in a chair. If you're at home, you might be in a wheelchair, on a sofa or a bench or something like this. You can really sit however you like. There's not just one way to actually sit during meditation. So what I'm going to share with you is just guidance to kind of help you find whatever's comfortable for you. So you can use something that I talk about, or you can find something else for yourself. It's really up to you to find something that's comfortable for the body. But here's a little bit of guidance that might be able to help you. If you're on the floor, you might sit with some cushions under your rear. This kind of helps to soften your seat a little bit. And then with your legs crossed, you just like to have them lightly crossed. If you have them real tight, it's going to impede the circulation and you're going to experience pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So maybe you like to put your legs off the mat. That's helpful for some people as well. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If you like this and you like to use this, you're more than welcome to. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. Other people might find some other options more comfortable. So you might decide to put your palms on your thighs or your knees. You might put your palms up, or you might even rest your hands comfortably in your lap. You find whatever's comfortable for you. It's not possible for everyone to be in the same exact position, so just find whatever's comfortable for you. And for those of you that are maybe on a chair or on a bench, in a wheelchair or something like this, same thing. You can sit however you're comfortable. You might find having your feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles is helpful, and then you can place your hands and arms wherever you like. The upper body is helpful if you have this erect. With the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, and you'll be able to actively train your mind. This is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like your mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation so you can actively train it. So by having the sternum up and the shoulders back, that's what's going to help you to be able to keep the mind attentive and alert. It also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, because with the sternum up and the shoulders back, you're able to more easily breathe. So you'll find it helpful for that as well. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll come back in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa อิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวาปานุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Nice to see all of you guys this morning. Welcome to our temporary classroom. We only have today and tomorrow that we're still teaching in this particular classroom. Then we're going to be moving back downstairs. On January 1st, we're going to have the grand reopening of our new learning center downstairs, where we've been using that for many years, but we refurbished it over the last month. And we're going to have a real grand opening on Wednesday the 1st at 9 a.m. You guys are welcome to come. We're going to be having a ribbon cutting celebration. We're going to be doing some meditation and some teaching. We're going to have some donuts, some really good donuts. If you guys would like to come have some donuts and stuff like that. So feel free to come and bring anybody that you'd like if you're going to be in town on the 1st of January at 9 a.m. In terms of this space here, just to help you guys feel even more comfortable here, we have bathrooms up here. If you guys would like to use the restroom, this first door here is a bathroom. And the very last door, as soon as you come up the stairs, that's a bathroom as well. Feel free to use that if you like at any time. We even have snacks and refreshments that are provided by our students over here on this table. You're welcome to help yourself to any of that stuff. And we have a larger bathroom for the whole entire temple. If you go out to the parking lot, you'll see the signs that take you around to the main temple bathrooms. So if you'd like to use those bathrooms, you can go out to the parking lot and see the signs over there as well. So again, welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. It's a great day to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Every day is a great day to learn the teachings of the Buddha. As I was mentioning, you're going to be able to learn how to move your mind to this peaceful and joyful mental state. We have multiple programs and multiple opportunities for you to learn here. We have a program called the Group Learning Program. It meets on Sundays and Wednesdays. This is a great place to start, whether you're here in Chiang Mai or you'd like to join online, because we live stream all of our classes. What we do is we have this book. It's called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And we go chapter by chapter each Sunday. And I cover a chapter in this book. And we're going to be in chapter 6 tomorrow. Chapter 6 is titled The Middle Way, Walking the Middle Way. This is a very simple teaching from the Buddha, but it's very profound when you apply it and you understand how to apply it in your day-to-day life. So if you'd like to come learn, that's a great opportunity to learn Chapter 6. But over a 7-month program, I gradually walk students through this book, helping to build a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And this is a great place for students to start. We even have courses and retreats where, like the first week of every month, we have a course called The Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. It meets from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. This is a great way to start your journey to enlightenment. And we're going to have one of those starting up the beginning of January. The very first full week of every month, we teach that course. So you're more than welcome to come to that. And by the way, all these things that I'm sharing with you, they're available to you at no cost. It doesn't cost you anything for any of the things that I'm talking about. So there's the foundation in the path to enlightenment. There's the harmony in relationships, experiencing the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment. We even have a retreat coming up in January, which is called Developing a Life Practice to Attain the First Stage of Enlightenment. That meets on Sunday through Friday. And then we even have a retreat each August called Purification of the Mind to Attain Enlightenment. So each one of these programs and courses are designed to help you and guide you along the path. And some of them are more foundational to help you get started and kind of building a framework. And others are more in depth, but nonetheless, they're all taught with the understanding that not everybody has learned a particular teaching. So there's no prerequisites for any of these courses or retreats. You can come into any of them and learn from the very beginning, but it does help if you've had a foundation to a certain degree. Because a program like this that meets on Saturdays, what we do is this book series that we have, the 13 books, we go volumes 2 through 13 over the course of a year and a half. This particular class today, we're going to be in volume 5. This is titled The First Stage of Enlightenment, Stream Enter. And we're going to be studying certain chapters from this book, where the vast majority of all the other programs that I teach, it's more of a traditional style of learning, where I'll be teaching for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, then I'll open up to questions, teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up to questions, and I use visual aids and things like this to be able to help you guys to learn. That's more of a traditional style of learning, which we're used to, and that's what I teach with all the other programs. But this particular program on Saturdays, it's more of like a study group where we study the words of the Buddha, and then I'm helping students to be able to kind of fill in this framework, where all the other programs, they're more of a foundation to help you get going and help you get moving on the path to enlightenment. This particular program kind of helps you fill in the framework. And depending on what somebody's learned in the past, there's certain things in this particular program that a student may or may not understand. But nonetheless, whatever you've learned, or even if this is the first time you've ever been to a temple to even learn the teachings of the Buddha, you'll be able to learn something today and be able to benefit from what you've learned. But just understand that there's some things that we're going to talk about today that may not be something that you fully understand at this point. And that's okay, because this particular program is more to fill in your framework versus all the other programs, which will help you to lay down a really nice foundation. So the way that this program works is we start with meditation, just like all of our other classes, because meditation is an important aspect of helping you get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment with just meditation. There's other things that you need besides just meditation. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment. You need other teachings, and that's why we study the original words of the Buddha, so that you can understand more of the entire path to enlightenment. But you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either, so that's why we incorporate it into all that we do. So the way that this program works is that we have chapters here that are part of our book series, and again, this is from volume 5. We're going to start with chapters 31 today. And what I do is I invite somebody from here at the temple or anybody joining in Zoom to volunteer to read a chapter. And when I say read a chapter, these are actually pretty short. Most of them are actually kind of like a page or half a page. This one you can see is like kind of a page and a half. It goes down here. And then what you have is you have the words of the Buddha, his original words from when he taught. This is a reference back to the original Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the source teachings of the Buddha. It's 45 volumes of books that are about this thick, and this is an excerpt from that, and this reference takes you back to that. And then after that, you usually have words from me that are going to help you to understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life. The Buddha teaches very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it helps to have a dedicated practitioner and a dedicated teacher to help guide you through that understands the totality of the teachings, because some of these teachings are related to other teachings. So typically I put some words here. This one is just referencing another chapter because this particular chapter is similar to another one. But you can see here, what I typically do is give much more words to be able to help you to understand and kind of reflect on this and understand how to incorporate it into your day-to-day life. So if there's a student here at the temple or anyone online who would like to volunteer to read, all you need to do is come get a microphone here at the temple in front of the camera in the white bowl. We have microphones. If you could talk with a microphone, that way people here at the temple and the people online will be able to hear you. All you need to do is press the gray button. You'll see the lights come on. You hold the microphone up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online. And then for those of you guys online, you can just electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream. So this is how you can volunteer to read. And then after you read, I will share some teachings on that to be able to help you understand what it is that we just read and kind of how to integrate it into your day-to-day life. Then after that, I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to what we just covered as part of the study group. And again, if you ask questions here, if you could use the microphones, that would be great. And for those of you guys online, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. And those of you guys that are in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and unmute your microphone and ask questions if you like. And by the way, these microphones, if you come and get one, you can just take it back to your seat because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share your microphone with the people around you. So is there anyone who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? You got it, Pat? Okay, great.
The noble method is to understand dependent origination. And what is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom? Here, householder, the noble disciple attends closely and carefully to dependent origination itself thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the elimination of this, that is eliminated. That is, with ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness. With consciousness as condition, name and form. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact. With contact as condition, feeling. With feeling as condition, craving. With craving as condition, clinging. With clinging as condition, existence. With existence as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the cause of this whole mass of discontentedness. But with the remainderless fading away and elimination of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, comes elimination of volitional formations, choices, and decisions. With the elimination of volitional formations, elimination of consciousness. With the elimination of consciousness comes elimination of name and form. With the elimination of name and form comes elimination of the 6 sense bases. With the elimination of the 6 sense bases comes elimination of contact. With the elimination of contact comes elimination of feeling. With the elimination of feeling comes elimination of craving. With the elimination of craving comes elimination of clinging. With the elimination of clinging comes elimination of existence. With the elimination of existence comes elimination of birth. With the elimination of birth comes elimination of aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair is eliminated. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. This is the noble method that he has clearly seen and thoroughly penetrated with wisdom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Appreciate that. So as I was mentioning just a moment ago, there's certain teachings in this particular program that students may or may not understand, especially if they haven't had a foundation yet, because this particular teaching, it's the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha. The Buddha's teachings are truths. They're not beliefs. He's not telling you something to believe. Instead, he's teaching you about the natural world around you. He's teaching you about the natural laws of existence. So with the wisdom of these natural laws, you can navigate the world more peacefully. When you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings like stress and anxiety and guilt and shame and fear, this is just the mind not understanding what it doesn't understand. There's certain aspects of the world that the mind doesn't understand, and it struggles and has difficulties. The mind is actually experiencing these feelings based on something that's going on inside your own mind. Oftentimes we think that other people are causing us to be angry. But if you experience anger or sadness or frustration or any of these other discontent feelings, your mind is actually causing this itself. In the Buddha's teachings, we'll be able to help guide you to be able to independently verify that for yourself, so that you can see what's causing these feelings, and then you can actually eliminate them. So you don't have to keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration, guilt, shame and fear, and stress and anxiety over and over and over again. You can get to the focus and the concentration and the clarity and the deep memory, to the point where your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. You're not having bitterness and harshness and hostility in your relationships anymore. You'll get to the point where you don't even have a bad mood. This is what enlightenment is. An individual who's trained their mind clearly and directly is able to get to this point where the mind is no longer experiencing these discontent feelings. And there's various layers of teachings that the Buddha teaches in order to help you gradually understand how to actively train your mind to get this enlightened mental state. This is actually the highest, most ultimate truth of the Buddha that somebody will usually start studying after they've already studied a lot of the foundational teachings. This isn't typically where you start out. So I'm going to explain this to you guys and help you to understand it. But just understand that you may or may not understand this 100% because you haven't done all the preliminary work to be able to learn all the other preliminary teachings that lead into this and help you to be able to understand this. So here what the Buddha is talking about is this noble method is to understand dependent origination. What he's talking about with dependent origination is that when there's this one thing, then there's something else that occurs. The Buddha is a master at showing this cause and effect, or this action and result. This is referred to as the natural law of Gama, or some people refer to it as karma, right? The natural law of Gama, the word Gama comes from the Pali language, where the word karma comes from the Sanskrit language. What this is referring to is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. That when there's a certain decision that's made, there's going to be a certain effect that is experienced. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you. When we talk about awakening the mind to enlightenment, we're talking about gaining wisdom of these natural laws. Just like you didn't understand the natural law of gravity when you first started off in life and you really struggled and had difficulties where you fell down, you hit your head, you broke your toys, you maybe broke open your elbows or your knees and you started bleeding. This is because the mind lacks wisdom, so it was making unwise decisions. It didn't understand the natural law of gravity. Even though it was affecting us, we didn't know about it, and now we were making unwise decisions and we experienced unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law of gravity, and now we can navigate the world with peacefulness and ease because we understand it and we make wiser decisions. But when you lack wisdom of natural laws, you'll tend to make unwise decisions and you'll experience unwholesome results. So part of those unwholesome results is the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all these other discontent feelings. So the Buddha is teaching you this dependent origination. He's showing you that how a being arises or originates dependent on certain conditions. There's certain causes and conditions that are producing this origination of this being coming into existence. So this is a 12-step process that he's showing this cause and effect of how beings come into the world and how they exist and why they experience these discontent feelings. But before you get to this, there's other preliminary teachings that you normally learn that lead into this. But I'm going to help you to understand this to whatever degree you can understand it today. So this first part, he's just introducing you to something that's called the wisdom of entailment. The wisdom of entailment is showing you how when this thing exists, that thing's going to come to be. When this thing is eliminated, that thing is going to be eliminated. And you've already been experiencing this in your life. So for example, because you chose to learn English, you were able to apply for a job. When you applied for a job, you were able to get a job interview. When you got a job interview, you were able to go and talk with people and communicate with people. When you were able to communicate with people at this job interview, you were offered a job. When you were offered a job, you accepted that job. And now when you accepted that job, you went to work each day. And when you went to work each day, you applied your effort and energy. And therefore, by applying your effort and energy, you got money and you got an income. And now with that money and income, you can purchase clothing and you can go outside and have friends. So the reason why you have friends is because you learned English. Right? There's this whole series of sequences of things that happen. This is called the wisdom of entailment. How when there's one thing, then there's something else that's going to come about. Because you learned English, you're able to get a job. Because you were able to get a job, you're able to get an income. Because you're able to get an income, you could afford to purchase clothing. By purchasing clothing, you could go outside in the world and communicate with other people and have friends. But if it wasn't for this very first thing of learning English, you wouldn't have been able to get to the point of having friends, right? So this is a whole series of events that have occurred. And then when this does not exist, that does not come to be. So if you wouldn't have learned English, you wouldn't have been able to get a job. Or maybe you're learning a different language. Maybe you know Russian or Italian. Maybe you work in that profession. But it's the same kind of thing, right? You learned a certain language. You went to get a job. You got an income. You were able to purchase clothing. You were able to now go outside and meet with friends. But if you didn't learn a language, you wouldn't have been able to get a job. You wouldn't have been able to get an income. You wouldn't have been able to get clothing. And you wouldn't have been able to have friends. So the Buddha is saying that if this does not exist, that does not come to be. If you wouldn't have learned a particular language of how to communicate with people, you wouldn't have been able to have friends. That's what he's basically showing you here. So I teach you that in order to now help you understand this. This is dependent origination, where he's now showing you the causes and conditions that leads to continuous rebirth over and over and over again, and what is leading to your discontentedness. He has other teachings that give you kind of like a window into this to help you understand it. The very first and beginning teaching that you would need to learn is called the Four Noble Truths. That's the place to actually start. And I've actually taught this many times. So our YouTube channel, our podcasts, our books, our audiobooks, all these things have that available to you to be able to show you what's causing your mind to be discontent and angry and frustrated. It's called craving, desire, attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning. When the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy, it gets excited, it gets elated, it gets pleasant feelings because you got what you wanted. But when you don't get what you want, then your mind gets angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. And you don't believe what you're hearing from me. Don't ever believe anything you hear me say. You need to be able to learn it, investigate it, examine it. You need to reflect on it to independently verify it. And then you need to practice and see the truth for yourself. So look at your own life. Look at maybe yesterday or a week ago, or maybe even this morning. You might have got frustrated or annoyed with something. At that time, you might have been looking for someone else to blame, because that's what the mind usually does, is it tries to blame other people for the feelings that you experience. But look at that same situation. There was something your mind wanted. It was longing and yearning for it. It expected this thing. And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. You would have been excited. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind was frustrated or angry or irritated. You can look at a situation that you've had recently, or you can even look back to your childhood. When you were a child and you wanted chocolate and ice cream, and you were like, Mommy, Daddy, can you buy me chocolate and ice cream? I want chocolate and ice cream. And they were like, here you go, have your chocolate and ice cream. Ah, you're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. We're licking our ice cream, feeling all good, right? And then the next time we ask for chocolate ice cream, they're like, here you go. We got all this chocolate and ice cream. But at some point, we were like, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever, right? Because we wanted that chocolate and ice cream. We were craving for it to be permanent. The mind is craving permanence in the unenlightened state. And when it gets what it wants, it gets happy. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or frustrated. You can see this if you look at the sun and you get so happy and excited when you see the sun. But then when it rains, you feel sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. Nobody's causing you to be angry or frustrated. It's the mind causing it itself. There's nobody even involved there. It's that the mind is craving permanence, but yet you live in an impermanent world. So if you crave for the sun to be permanent, when you see it's raining, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if you really get excited when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if you're on your way to the airport and you really want to go to Thailand or Australia or wherever you're traveling to, you really want to go really badly and you're so excited about going, well, when you show up and the plane's delayed or it's canceled, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated or annoyed, right? Because the mind's wanting something. And if it gets what it wants, it gets happy. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets irritated or frustrated or annoyed. The mind is craving permanence, and you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing. So it's not possible for every plane to take off on time. Just not possible. There's going to be crew issues, maintenance issues, weather issues. There are going to be certain problems that occur with this airplane. But if your mind is craving permanence and wanting things to be a certain way, that plane's got to take off on time and you'll be happy. But if it's delayed, you'll be frustrated or irritated or annoyed. This is the mind causing its own discontent feelings. So the Buddha is going to walk you through here in dependent origination, showing you the detail of this, where the Four Noble Truths gives you a window into this, which I teach at other times. This is like the detail. So if you've ever had a math teacher where you just wrote the answer on the paper and you turned it in and they're like, show me your work. I need to see your work. I need to see that you thought this through. That's what this is. This is the work, where he has other teachings where he just shows you the answer, and then now he's going to show you the detail. So that's why we call this the highest, most ultimate truth, because he's showing you the detail. And you can independently verify this as you make your way on the journey to enlightenment. But at the very beginning of your journey, you usually don't have what you need to independently verify this. But I'll still walk you through it. So what he's talking about here with ignorance, this is like the unknowing of true reality. We use the word ignorance in a derogatory and demeaning way typically. So the Buddha, in my opinion, didn't use the word ignorance. He used this word or the phrase of unknowing of true reality. This is the way we're translating it over to ignorance. But really what he's talking about is this confusion or this misunderstanding, this lack of wisdom. So for example, you probably firmly believe that it's other people that's causing you to be angry. You might firmly believe that mom and dad or brothers and sisters are making you angry. That's because of your lack of wisdom, your unknowing of true reality, your confusion. You haven't penetrated into the Four Noble Truths to be able to see the wisdom that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is what we're referring to when we talk about ignorance or unknowing of true reality. Because of the unknowing of true reality and the lack of wisdom, the mind has volitional formations, which are choices and decisions. You make certain choices and decisions that are unwise. And now when you make uninformed decisions, those decisions are going to lead to a continued consciousness in the world. The mind's going to continue to exist because one of the things that the mind has in it is called craving, desire, attachment. And because of craving, desire, attachment, the mind is longing, yearning. This is like the fuel that causes the spark that leads to the next consciousness. That if you have a fire that's burning and it has logs on this fire and it's sending off sparks into the world and the wind is carrying it, when that spark lands, it's going to ignite a new fire and it's going to be a completely new fire, but it's coming from the fuel of this original fire. So the same thing is happening within the human mind, that when your mind has this unknowing of true reality or this ignorance, it's making certain choices and decisions in the world. And one of those choices and decisions are to not extinguish the craving, desire, attachment. And now that's leading to a new consciousness. That's the spark that leads to this next consciousness. That consciousness or that mind, that's what a consciousness is, it's going to find what's called a name and form. A name and form is essentially the physical body. The Buddha goes into detail of what name and form is, but at this point you can just think about it as the physical body. That if there's a consciousness, it's going to need to find a physical body. So it's going to go into the womb of a woman where there's an egg and a sperm, and then there's a consciousness that comes together. And now we refer to that as a being. with that consciousness or that mind and that physical body, the name and form, then it's going to create the 6 sense bases. The 6 sense bases are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and then the mind itself. This is how you experience everything in the world, is through these 6 sense bases. And now with those 6 sense bases, you experience contact. You experience contact through these 6 sense bases. You can see certain physical forms. You can hear sounds. You can smell odors. You can have certain flavors that are tasted by the tongue. There's certain physical objects that touch the body. And then there's certain thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. So there's certain contact that comes through these 6 sense bases. When you have contact, you're then going to experience a feeling, which is called a conditioned feeling. Based on some condition, you are now going to have a feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. And it's coming from this contact. Because when there's contact in the mind's experiencing feelings, then there's what's called craving. This is the longing, the yearning, the mind forming its inner feelings based on some condition. That if you get what you want, you get happy. But if you don't get what you want, you get sad or frustrated or irritated. This is the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. The mind's going to see that contact as either agreeable or disagreeable because of your cravings. So if you taste a certain flavor, you're going to see that either as agreeable or disagreeable based on your craving, desire, attachment, the mind's longing, yearning. So you can get to a point where you don't see it as agreeable or disagreeable flavor, but you just see it as food that nourishes the body. But with something called central desire in the mind's going to have certain cravings where it sees this is agreeable and this is disagreeable. Or say you're driving down the street and you hear music, you're going to hear that music and it's either going to be agreeable or disagreeable to you. So if you're at a stoplight and someone pulls up to you with music that you like, you might be like, yeah, all right, that's my jam. Let's have fun. Let's party. All right. But now when you pull up to the next light, when someone has music that you don't like, you find it disagreeable. Because of your cravings, you'll experience discontentedness. You'll have annoyance or frustration. And you might think it's the other person who's causing that, but it's actually your own mind. It's because of your cravings that you see this music as agreeable and this music as disagreeable. And this whole experience is impermanent, but the mind craves for permanent comfort. It wants things to be permanently comfortable because of its cravings. And when the mind is experiencing this agreeable contact, then you're going to get pleasant feelings. But when you experience disagreeable contact through any of these 6 sense bases, then you're going to experience the discontent feelings that are painful. And this is coming from the craving. Now, when you experience craving, where the mind's longing, yearning for pleasant feelings, when you get those pleasant feelings, you want to cling to them. You want to hold on to them. So the craving is the external longing, yearning for something. The clinging is the holding on to it. Then there's existence, where now there's a being in existence in the womb of the woman. Then that being is then born. And then when there's birth, there's going to be aging and death. This being is going to age and is going to die. Every single one of us are going to die. That's because of the impermanent nature of this physical body. Our life is impermanent. We are not in a permanent existence. We are impermanent. So we're going to experience this aging and this death. But if you crave for permanent existence, or you crave for permanent youthfulness, aging and death will be very painful for you. But if you just understand that this is impermanence, this is normal, of course this body is going to age. Of course this body is going to grow old and die. This is impermanence. That's the universal truth of impermanence. And then if a being is born and it's experiencing aging and death, they're also going to experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. This is how discontentedness comes about. So because of the mind's ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, then it's going to crave and it's going to cling, and then it's going to experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. So because of the lack of wisdom in the mind continues to crave. It continues to long and yearn, want things to be a certain way, and now it gets pleasant feelings or painful feelings. And now it's going to be stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again because of its ignorance, because of its unknowing of true reality. So that's why on the path to enlightenment, you're not interested in believing any of the teachings. You would like to get to wisdom, because wisdom is going to antidote this. So up here where the Buddha is saying, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. So if there's ignorance, there's going to be discontentedness. You're going to have sadness and anger and frustration. But when this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the elimination of this, that is eliminated. So with the elimination of ignorance, you will eliminate your discontentedness. That's how you eliminate all the painful feelings. The anger, the frustration, the guilt, the shame, the fear, is you need to arise wisdom. That's how you get to enlightenment. You awaken by cultivation of wisdom. And that's why you learn and examine and investigate his teachings. You reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life. So now let me walk through this for you in another way, and then I'll open up to questions. Looks like Marcy has a question. So in our past lives, we had ignorance. We had an unknowing of true reality, and we made certain unwise decisions that led to this consciousness that we are now experiencing. It found a certain physical body. We have the 6 sense spaces. We experience contact through those 6 sense spaces. And if the mind is unenlightened, you will experience conditioned feelings, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. When we were in the womb of our mom, we were having all kinds of pleasant feelings. We were like, hey, we got this whole place to ourselves. We're getting food pumped in on the umbilical cord. Hey, life couldn't be better. We're just hanging out in mom's womb, right? And we started having craving. We were like, oh, this is wonderful. I would like to hold on to this. This is clinging. I would like to hold on to this permanently. This is great in here. And then we had this existence and we were born. And as soon as we were born, we were discontent from the very beginning because we were craving that permanence in mom's womb. We wanted to be in there permanently. That was perfect. That was the best ever, right? We were just in there chilling and hanging out with, we were just getting everything we needed. But then here comes this impermanence. We're not allowed to stay in there permanently. It's just not possible. We got pushed out into the world, or maybe we had surgery and we were brought out into the world, and we were discontent from the very beginning. We were crying and crying, right? So that's how the Buddha is explaining this to you, is that we're going to continue to experience this cycle of rebirth over and over and over again. And you can see this in your life, because certain things that you're experiencing, as long as you have a lack of wisdom, you'll keep experiencing those same problems over and over and over again. So if you're having like broken relationships over and over and over again, or maybe you have a life partner or someone you consider to be a life partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, and you guys start out really well and you have all these great feelings, these pleasant feelings, but somewhere during the relationship, it becomes a struggle and you guys break up. Then, okay, you're sad for a while. Eventually you get over that. You let that person go, and then you have another relationship and the same exact thing happens again. This is because of the lack of wisdom, that the mind hasn't learned how to have harmonious relationships yet. It's just a lack of wisdom. You're not a bad person. You haven't necessarily done anything wrong. It's just that the mind has this unknowing of true reality, and it's making unwise decisions. And I'm sure the other person is making unwise decisions too. But as long as the mind is unenlightened with this lack of wisdom, it will continue to make unwise decisions over and over and over again, and you'll keep experiencing the same results over and over and over again. So what the Buddha's teachings are guiding you to do is cultivate wisdom so that you can dismantle all of this, and you don't have to keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. So then he just walks you through the elimination of all of this. By eliminating ignorance, then you eliminate these unwise decisions or volitional formations, and then so forth and so on. And what he's essentially saying is that a noble disciple, up here, he's saying a noble disciple attends closely and carefully to dependent origination, meaning that you've understood it very deeply. A noble disciple is someone who studies his teachings very well. This is someone who's deeply practicing his teachings. Today, we might just call that person a deep practitioner of the teachings of the Buddha, where during the lifetime of the Buddha, he would refer to it as a noble disciple. That's how we would refer to someone who studied his teachings deeply. So this book being titled The First Stage of Enlightenment, in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment, among other things, an individual would need to deeply understand this and have independently verified it and see the truth that this particular teaching that he's teaching is the truth. You need to be able to independently verify it, because then it teaches you and helps you to understand why the Buddha didn't teach things like rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. He didn't teach these things. Even if you've been to places where they do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and they consider what they're doing Buddhism, the Buddha didn't teach those things because he's guiding you to cultivate wisdom. Rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't produce wisdom. The only way to get to enlightenment is to practice training the mind, cultivating wisdom. So you won't see any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship in a place where they're actually teaching the original teachings of the Buddha. So you can understand many things from this teaching of dependent origination, and these are just some of those things. So I'm going to open up to any questions that you guys have. Remember, here at the temple, if you could use the mics. Those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Marcy has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
You, Teacher David. So my question is based upon the six sense bases. I've noticed that the mind has recognized, this being Marcy tends to enjoy cooking and baking. But I've noticed that the mind will recognize, this cookie is a little bit more tastier than that cookie. But it's not that I won't eat the other cookie. Like, I just know it's a cookie and I'm going to eat it, and that's where it is. But the mind does notice a difference. Is that normal, or is still craving existing in the mind because I'm noticing that difference?
No, that's normal. Noticing the difference is one thing, but forming feelings based on it is a whole nother thing, because what you're noticing is impermanence. This cookie tastes this way and that cookie tastes a different way. And you're seeing is this one is, in your opinion, more tasty and this one is not. But if you're forming feelings on that, where you get so happy and excited when you eat this cookie and you're kind of frustrated and annoyed when you eat this cookie, that's because of its craving, the mind longing, yearning. It's now going to form feelings based on this, because when it tastes this cookie and it's so enjoyable, you get these pleasant feelings, and now the mind wants that to be permanent. And then when you taste this other cookie that doesn't taste the same way, the mind experiences this impermanence because of its craving, and seeing that as disagreeable, it will then experience the painful feelings. So just noticing that they taste different is just observing impermanence in the world. But it's when the mind forms feelings based on that now you know it's craving, desire, attachment.
Okay. And a second question to that, Teacher David, is basically what I did is I created these cookie boxes for people that I care for. And a lot of them were saying, oh, these cookies are delicious. They're wonderful, wonderful. And I noticed a spark in the mind, or in the senses, where I started to get a little bit of that feeling of like I want to say maybe gratitude. I'm like, wow, they're really enjoying these cookies. Like, I'm so glad that they're actually enjoying these cookies and the taste. But I was having a difficult to say, well, should I be cutting this off? Am I feeling a craving to wanting them to like the cookies, or am I just responding to the fact that I'm joyful? I'm glad that they're enjoying these cookies that I took the time to create and make. I guess that's where my question is how am I delineating whether or not there's a real craving there, or if I'm just responding in a joyful manner?
How would you feel if they told you these were the most horrible cookies they've ever had?
Probably laugh.
Okay, so if there's a craving in the mind, you'll experience pleasant feelings when they give you positive comments. But if they tell you negative things, then you'd feel painful feelings. So that's how you know whether the mind is actually experiencing craving, desire, attachment. If there's a little spark in the mind, that could be a little bit of a hint of residual craving, where you're getting just a little bit of a kick of potential pleasant feelings. But your mind, as you've shared before, has been trained to the point where you can cut that off. You need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a problem as the painful ones. When we're talking about conditioned pleasant feelings, the mind is experiencing this pleasure based on some condition. And if you allow the mind to do that, then when that condition changes, you're going to experience this painful feelings. So by the time that your mind gets to enlightenment, you're experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any particular thing that's occurring, and you can experience joy and happiness all the time. So your mind in the enlightened mental state is beyond the conditional pleasant feelings and painful feelings. It's experiencing unconditioned mental qualities where it's always happy and it's always joyful. But as you're making your way to that and you're starting to diminish these conditioned feelings, you can sometimes get that little kick that you're talking about, that little spark, and the mind kind of jumps in there and cuts that off. And now you need to be able to reside with equanimity, calmness, and composure no matter what. So if somebody says, wow, these are the best cookies I've ever had, inside you're like, wow, that's wonderful. I'm really pleased that you like those. Great, excellent. And now if somebody says, oh, these are the most horrible cookies I've ever had, then you're not affected by that. You're not feeling, disgruntled or irritated or annoyed, right? So if you get so excited when they say, yes, these are great cookies, oh, they're so wonderful, that means when someone tells you they're horrible, then you're going to get painful feelings. And it's only a matter of time, because of impermanence, that somebody's going to tell you that these cookies weren't very well. Or you're going to show up and you're going to see the cookies in the trash can and they threw them in their trash can, and now you're going to feel disgruntled about that. So if you don't allow the mind to get those conditioned pleasant feelings, then you won't experience the painful ones. You can just be joyful no matter what. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, but there might be a little bit of residual craving and clinging in there, but it sounds like your mind's cutting it off, which is what you'd like to do.
Okay, thank you, Teacher David. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions here or online? Yes, ma'am. If you could get a mic, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, there's a gray button there, and it just takes a second for the lights to come on.
The question might be based on my misunderstanding of the word volition, but if the condition is ignorance, the volitional formation would be an unwise volitional formation, right? An unwise choice. Is it then also true that if the condition were wisdom, you would still have these volitional formations, these choices, but they would just be wise? And in that case, would the change just end there?
Yeah, so what you're explaining is correct, that if you have ignorance, your volitional formations are going to be unwise, and it's going to continue to lead through all of these causes and conditions that lead to continuous rebirth and continuous discontentedness. But if you've transformed this ignorance into wisdom, you're still going to have volitional formations. You're still going to make choices and decisions, but it's not going to lead to another consciousness. It's not going to lead to taking up another physical body. It's not going to lead to the six sense bases. It's not going to lead to continuous contact. You're not going to have conditioned feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, because your mind's now beyond that. You've eliminated your cravings and clinging. That's not there anymore. You're still going to be in existence in this life, but there's not going to be a next existence. You're not going to experience another rebirth. You're not going to experience continuous aging and death beyond this life. This is why people, when they get to enlightenment, some people say they look very young. There's a youthful appearance to the individual, because the body is still aging. They're still going to experience the breakup of the body in the mind, but this aging and death is essentially stopped at this point. And you're not going to experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair any longer, because your decisions are now coming from wisdom instead of ignorance. And you'll see this in your life, where right now you might have certain relationships that you have disgruntledness, bitterness, hostility, you have difficulties in certain relationships. But as you start gaining more and more wisdom and you start functioning in these relationships more wisely, you're going to see your relationships are going to clear out. Where typically what we do is we want mom and dad to change, or we want brothers and sisters to change. We sit back and we want everyone else to change. But what the Buddha is teaching you to do is for you to change, for you to cultivate wisdom. And by you cultivating wisdom and you experiencing improvement in your life, that's where you'll experience improvement in your relationships, because you're now making wise decisions in your relationships and you're not experiencing this painful feelings any longer. Because when we lack wisdom, when you experience those painful feelings, you will falsely attribute it to somebody externally. And when you falsely believe that it's your mom or dad or your brothers and sisters or other people causing these painful feelings, you will tend to push them away out of your life, or you'll push the situation out of your life. You might have pushed friends or family members out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve your problem. But you can see it didn't solve your problem, because you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. Or if you falsely attribute these painful feelings to something external because of the ignorance, then you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with that person through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal because of that ignorance. Or you might put your expectations on someone. You might try to control them or force them to do something your way. This is the mind trying to get its cravings fulfilled. So with the wisdom, you won't make those same choices anymore. You won't push people away. You won't be bitter, harsh, and hostile. You won't put your expectations on people. But the way that this teachings work is you can't just snap your fingers and instantly do it, right? So this is the Buddha teaching you what is at play here, what is actually happening. And then he gives you the tools and techniques in other teachings that are going to teach you how to transform this and how to dismantle this. This is explaining the problem. That's what he's doing here. He's deeply explaining the problem. His other teachings explain the solution to that problem. And then when you implement the solution, that's when you're antidoting this ignorance to become wisdom. And yes, your decisions are then going to be wise. And now you're not going to experience all these other subsequent things that are coming after that. Okay, looks like Marcy has another question.
I apologize, Teacher David. I should have just wrote in there that I'll read next if there is no one else that would like to read.
Oh, okay. That's the volunteer to read. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, sir. We have some microphones here. And like I mentioned, you guys can keep them with you and then just pass them around.
I was wondering, so wanting enlightenment is a form of craving. If that's so, then what would be the proper approach to the practice?
Yeah, if you're wanting and longing, yearning to get to enlightenment, that's going to be a craving, desire, attachment, and you're not going to be able to get it that way. But also, if you're on the other side, where you could care less and you're dull and lethargic, and you could care less what happens, you're complacent, you're not going to get to enlightenment there either. So the Buddha invites you to this middle way, which is what I'm going to be teaching tomorrow in our group learning program, where you gradually work towards something as a goal, as an objective or interest, but you're not forming your inner feelings based on that. So like say you would like to get a PhD, you can gradually work towards that goal, making wise decisions to work towards it. And if you fall short, hey, you can be content with that because you've learned a lot in the process. But if you have a craving, desire, attachment, and you're longing, yearning for this PhD, you can only be happy if you get it. And now you might be making unwise decisions and you're pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself to do this, where instead you're like, hey, most people get to a PhD in 8 years, or that's kind of like the norm. But you know what? If I take 10 or 12 years, that's okay. I'm completely fine with that. And I'm just going to gradually make my way to it. Right? So like when I got my bachelor's degree, it took me 7 years to get to it because I gradually learned in order to get my bachelor's degree, where there were other people 4 or 5 years, they got it, right? Hey, no harm, no foul. I still got it, still learned a lot. So you gradually work towards it as a goal, objective, or interest. Same thing with enlightenment. You would like to gradually work towards that without this longing and yearning for it, because that's going to essentially sabotage you if you have this craving, desire, attachment for it. Okay, so let's go to the next chapter. Oh, you have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I don't think I fully understand the difference between the name and form and existence. For me, like the microphone, it exists. It has a name and form, but I may not have personal feelings on it. I'm not clinging for it. I'm not craving for it, but it still exists. So
Sure.
what is the difference?
Okay, so this is referring to beings coming into existence rather than the microphone, but I understand you're having that analogy. So what name and form is this is essentially the physical body, that there is a physical body, but then it needs all these other things in order to come into existence. Right? If there's just an egg and a sperm, that's going to create the physical body, but there's no existence yet. There needs to be a consciousness that comes in. There needs to be the sixth sense bases and all these other things in order for you to get to an actual existence where this being now exists.
So that means if I don't really have a subjective feelings to something, actually that thing does not really exist in my world, at least.
That's something different than what's being explained here. This is explaining how a being comes into existence. It's not talking about your thoughts or your ideas or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. For those of you guys that have mics, if you guys could make sure they're off, because we'll get feedback and it'll start buzzing really loud and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Let's see. This one was Marcy, you said you would like to read. Go ahead, ma'am.
The little bit of soil in the fingernail. Monks, what do you think? Which is more, the little bit of soil that I have taken up in my fingernail, or this great earth? Venerable Sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant compared to the great earth. That little bit of soil is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, for a noble disciple, a person accomplished in view, who has made the breakthrough, the discontentedness that has been destroyed and eliminated is more, while that which remains is insignificant. Compared to the former mass of discontentedness that has been destroyed and eliminated, the latter is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction, as there is a maximum of 7 or more lives. He is one who understands as it really is. This is discontentedness. This is the cause of discontentedness. This is the elimination of discontentedness. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So the Buddha taught through oral teachings. Everything he taught was oral. And whenever you're teaching in an oral tradition, there's kind of 3 ways to help people remember your teachings. And the Buddha used all 3 of these methods. One is you give people lists. This is why we have the 4 Noble Truths, the 3 Universal Truths, the 5 Precepts, the 7 Factors of Enlightenment, the 10 Fetters, these kinds of things. Because if you remember 7 or 8 of the 10 fetters, you're going to know, like, there's 2 more. There's 2 more. I know there's 2 more. What are the 2 more? You're going to remember what those other 2 are eventually, right? So you give people lists. The other way that you help people to remember your teachings is you repeat them. As you noticed in this particular discourse, the Buddha repeated things twice, right? So when you repeat things over and over in an oral tradition, people will tend to remember. The other thing that a Buddha does that is teaching in an oral tradition is they tell stories. By telling stories, it helps people to relate your teaching to a particular story, and now they'll tend to remember that. So the Buddha is telling a little bit of a story here at the beginning, which he talks about this little bit of soil under his fingernail. He asks his students, what is more, this soil that's under my fingernail or all the soil of all the earth? And of course, his students are like, oh, all the soil of all the earth is much more than that little bit of soil under your fingernail. That's incalculable. So now the Buddha relates that to a teaching. He says, so too, monks, for a noble disciple, a deep practitioner who studied my teachings, a person accomplished in view. Being accomplished in view is something we've studied in this program already, where you're accomplishing various things that you actually have independently verified as part of your path. So we won't go into detail what that is unless you guys ask questions about it. Who has made the breakthrough. What he's talking about here is someone who's understood the Four Noble Truths. The very first teaching that he shares, if you've had the breakthrough, meaning that you fully understand and have independently verified the Four Noble Truths, you have come to the conclusion that you know that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. You no longer believe that it's other people who are causing these feelings. So if you study the Four Noble Truths with me or with the original words of the Buddha, you'll be able to have that breakthrough where you'll be able to independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And when you have that breakthrough, that is a real benefit to you, because as long as you go around the world thinking that other people are causing your discontent feelings, you'll never solve them. Because you'll keep blaming mom or dad or brothers and sisters or your coworkers or your friends or family, and you'll keep pushing people away. You'll keep being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you'll keep putting your expectations on people. And this doesn't actually solve your problem. It just keeps you stuck in your problem. So if you can have a breakthrough to understanding the Four Noble Truths, this is going to help you to be able to make your way to enlightenment. And what he's saying is the discontentedness that has been destroyed and eliminated is more, while that which remains is insignificant. So he's saying that someone who's practiced my teachings deeply, that has broken through to the Four Noble Truths and understands that it's their own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, and has practiced to a certain degree, they've eliminated much more discontentedness than still exists in the mind. What he's referring to here is someone who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment. Someone who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they still experience some discontentedness because their mind's not enlightened yet, but they've eliminated a significant portion of their discontentedness. It's just a mere fraction of what it once was, because you've seen this gradual diminishing. Oftentimes when people think about enlightenment, they think the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. If you read his teachings and you know anything about the world, then you know that everything you've ever accomplished has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. That learning English or some job or occupation that you have, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you've benefited and improved in that situation. And getting to enlightenment is the same way. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So as you're gradually making your way towards the first stage of enlightenment, your discontent feelings will be gradually eliminated to the point where in the first stage of enlightenment, you're still getting frustrated, you're still getting annoyed, but it's very minimal compared to what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment. And that's what the Buddha is saying here. And he's using this analogy of all the soil and all the earth that represents your discontentedness before you got on the path to enlightenment. But when you get into that first stage of enlightenment, it's like the soil under your fingernail. It's just a little bit that you're still experiencing discontentedness. It's when you actually get to the fourth stage of enlightenment that the mind is actually enlightened. And from that point forward, you will never experience discontentedness ever again. It's impossible for an enlightened being to experience anger and frustration and irritation and annoyance, all these other discontent feelings. So he's using an analogy to help you be able to see that and tell a story, because that's going to help you. And then here, what he's talking about is he's talking about the Four Noble Truths. This part right here is him pointing to the Four Noble Truths. This isn't the Four Noble Truths themselves in detail. It's just a summarized way of referring to the Four Noble Truths. That's the breakthrough that he's referring to. In order to get to this point where you have a mere fraction of the discontent feelings and you've significantly eliminated the discontent feelings that you once experienced, you're going to need to break through to understanding the Four Noble Truths. And that's why he says an effort should be made to understand. If you're interested in eliminating your discontent feelings, where you no longer experience guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety and sadness and anger and all these other feelings, you're going to need to make an effort to learn and study and reflect and independently verify and practice the Four Noble Truths. And that's where I start students out. When they take a foundational program with me, we start out with the Four Noble Truths, and I walk you through in a traditional style of learning, where here the Buddha is just pointing to it and saying that's the beginning of the path. If you've ever been hiking on a hiking trail, And at the beginning of the trail, they have like a trail marker that shows you kind of a map of the trail and kind of gives you some details. Like this is a 3-kilometer hike. You're going to go up a mountain, down a ravine, across the stream, and it's going to circle back to the parking lot. That trail marker is the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is like a trail marker showing you what it is that you're going to encounter along your path to enlightenment. And that's why you'd like to start there. You could just jump onto the path of this hiking trail without looking at the trail marker, but you might get lost along the way. You might have all kinds of problems along the way. Whereas if you look at the trail marker and you understand what you're headed for, you're going to have much more success and more enjoyment on this hiking trail. So that's why the Four Noble Truths is the first thing that you need to learn. So he's pointing that out for you. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter, either here or online? No? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to end class here. We typically just go as far as we can go in this particular class. I teach this class at nighttime. I do it from home, and I study 10 chapters in a particular class session. And that usually takes us about 1.5 to 2 hours because we don't usually do meditation, because those people who study in the evening online with me, they're usually already meditating. They have their own meditation practice built up. But here we see a lot of new people coming in, so we start with meditation and we kind of walk you through in an introductory way to help you understand a lot of these teachings. But in the evening, I go through 10 individual chapters. But here we just teach up to a point where it's kind of about 10:30 to 10:45, and then we kind of finish from there. So what I'm going to do to end class is just thank all of you guys for coming. Thank you for being interested to learn the teachings of the Buddha and maybe get some exposure to them. If you would like to learn more, there's opportunity for you to do that. You can come either here to the temple, or you can join online as you travel, because I imagine many of you travel. You can join our live classes at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. We do the live stream. I teach them here at 9 a.m. at the temple, and then at 9 p.m. I do it from home, from my home studio, so you can still learn no matter where you are. And if you can't attend the live classes, then they're recorded. So on YouTube or on our podcast or on Facebook, you can actually watch the recording. There's plenty of people who do it that way as well. So if you'd like to get access to these books and the videos and the podcast, you can even get personal guidance where you meet with me personally, either here in Chiang Mai, or we can meet online. You can schedule an appointment and we'll meet one-on-one, because it's one thing to learn in class, but it's another thing to learn and apply to your own direct situation. You can actually meet with me too. It's all available at no cost, whether it's the books, the videos, the podcast, the classes, courses, retreats, the personal guidance. If you're interested in getting rid of your anger and your sadness and frustration and the guilt and the shame and the fear and the stress and anxiety, you've got someone here that's very motivated to help you. And I provide you all these resources at no cost to be able to help you to be able to learn how to do this and how to get to this point where your mind's no longer experiencing those. So if you'd like to get access to this, you can go to our website, which is a central hub. It's buddhadailywisdom.com. From there, you can download our books for free. You can take them and go print them. You can get printed versions here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost. You just cover the cost. We have a sign here that shares with you what the cost is. Or you can order them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. So Buddha Daily Wisdom is the website, and I have it on the bulletin board over there, on some cards. You'll see it on the chanting sheets. You'll see the website. So if you're interested in healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again, that's what the teachings of the Buddha are here for. They're not rules. They're not commandments. They're not beliefs. It's not doctrine. It's not any of that kind of stuff. It's to help train your mind in this life so that you can see the results in this life. So again, thank you all for coming, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. 再见.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.